Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave and a continuation of the time change up. We have a time reversal right now. Anyways, plenty to talk about today on the short-term time frames. Most importantly, of course, high-term time frames more or less unchanged. And I do want to say that because yesterday was actually quite the success, I think I'll be keeping the current time frame for the live streams. Now, with that said, I actually did feel like my voice was absolutely wrecked after that live stream. And while it feels fine right now, I am a little bit concerned if it actually does start to spruce back up a little bit later. So it is possible that I actually don't do a live stream later tonight, which will be sometime around 1 p.m. GMT, that is, British Standard Time, or GM, whatever the hell GMT is, I don't even know. Greenwich, is that it? Anyways, with that said, if all goes well, then definitely we'll be on at that time, and I'll schedule it for now. Anyways, into the Krown Chain application we go, because we want to be wasting no more time for this as we do prepare for the day ahead. And there's actually plenty to talk about right here. We do see Bitcoin dominance heading down about 0.5% from yesterday to today. Still, though, this is looking like a continuation leg for the Bitcoin dominance, still faltering and really putting in a prolonged, a prolonged downtrend. Anyways, on top of that, we do see fear and greed index pretty much exactly where it has been, still oscillating within the low 70 regions, which is neither here nor there. It's almost becoming a meme in and of itself. But more importantly, with that, we really haven't seen a major reset on this alongside price action coming back down from essentially the top side of the prior all-time high. And what else do we see on top of this? Open interest, pretty much the same from yesterday to today as well. I would say that on top of this would still play within the long-term narrative that bull laws are still running this market. So we do see open interest essentially coming down with price action, albeit incredibly muted there. So I don't really look at this as anything like too actionable in and of itself, but it is interesting nonetheless to call out, especially when very little things are going on other than that. As far as the top 10 best coins, top 10 worst coins, it looks to me like it's all the same sort of coins rotating to and fro. I see Yearn Finance over there actually look like it's having a decent day right there, and of course Engine Coin back on top with another 16% almost on the day, and Harmony 23% to the upside. Nem Blockchain, that bastard, coming down about 16 3/4. XRP giving up, coughing up some of that rally as well, and the usual suspects, I suppose. Anyways, is there anything else that I want to mention here before we move on? Yes, of course, Eric and Ken have the latest edition of their market newsletter coming out actually today, or what will be there tomorrow, but my today, this early morning. And if you are interested in traditional markets, especially US markets, that is, then they're going to be they're going to be doing like a bi-weekly sort of issuing of this market newsletter. So definitely check it out. As that is their whole do, and you can also check out their daily live stream at the Liquidity Zone. So with that in mind, I also want to call out all of the interviews that we've been doing over the past week. Jackie, I want to call out Jay, I want to call out, of course, the most recent one, Z-Feld, and these guys just absolutely killed it. Can't stress that if you are interested in sort of hearing the journey of a lot of different traders, definitely check out those videos, because they really did a great job, and I'm very glad to see the response of it. And motherfucker, it is kitchen time apparently. Anyways, into the market data tab we go. Seriously, turn it off, god damn it. Anyways, what do we see over here? Yeah, we do see funny rate coming down quite significantly. So most importantly, we did see over the past couple days when Bitcoin was around the prior all-time high at about $60,000, that funny rate was above the threshold of 0.1% region, and it was staying there for about a little bit over 1 day at a time, which was giving us a bit of cause for concern in the short term, suggesting that Bitcoin probably does play out a bit of a short-term pullback, which is what I believe that we're kind of seeing right now within the context of a greater macro uptrend. And if we do zoom in on the minutia over here, we can see that all major exchanges now are well below the threshold, even FTX, that is, which is constantly a major outlier, down around about 0.058 for the current funding period, and everyone else pretty much obviously below there, but more importantly trending down over time, as you can see from this chart from our January highs, most importantly. So I do still look at this as a bullish reset first and foremost, as Bitcoin more or less plays a range on the high term timeframes, and low term timeframes do come down in as somewhat of a short term downtrend. Anyways, anything else that we see here that is sticking out like a sore thumb? Not necessarily. I do want to call out the higher lows on open interest right here. I do happen to look at that as something that is relevant, but in its current posture, it's not exactly relevant to where we're currently at. But more importantly, if we really do start to actually put in a reversal on this, I really actually would start to look at price action as maybe putting in a bit of a reversal, maybe a bit of a change of behavior, if you will. But for right now, I still fail to see any major changes in behaviors on high-term timeframes. Doesn't mean that it can't happen, of course, but at the end of the day, I do need to see proof, not promises, within this market. So with that said, we're going to go into the charts right here. Keep this one nice and short, of course, as usual, or at least hopefully. And do we want to start off with Bitcoin? Do we want to start off with traditional markets? Let's actually start off with Bitcoin today. And we did get a little bit of a secondary drive down after yesterday's live stream. So to kind of follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis, let's actually go to our regular charts over here. It's just going to be a little bit cleaner for right now. And I left you off, or we left each other off yesterday when Bitcoin was putting in a bit of that first bounce off the 200 simple, as we did say, somewhere around about $57,000. And it looks like we just barely grazed that region. 56,931.5 was the high of that, and then another drive to the downside, as we said, was likely to kind of transact from that region. Now, I was saying that I would really appreciate. No, I'd like to see Bitcoin somewhere down around about 54,500ish region to 54,000 bucks even. And with the response of price action in its current posturing, I do think that this is becoming a little bit less likely. And now we can come up with some obvious ranges here, granted the price action from the last 24 hours. Anyways, with that said, the 200 exponential average is going to be a very obvious basing area for price action at about 55,500ish region. Nice and easy, rolling off the tongue. And I really wouldn't be looking for any sort of short-term downside breaks until that level actually does really start to give way once again. I would not be using the 200 simple in this case. And if anything, I actually am looking for a bit of a short-term pop back up to 57. Well, we're already at 57, so that's not really saying all that much. But if we do peruse all the lower-term timeframes from a momentum oscillator perspective over here, we can see very clearly that a lot of momentum oscillators are looking for a little bit of a pity bounce at the very least, perhaps even reversal, which we will overlay conditions for that as well. But 4-hour stokes coming all the way down to the edge of the critical zone in the bearish territory, really for the first time since that was like mid to late March. 3 hours already kind of twisting up and also playing out the same trend line from our last few lows within the same region. Oh, Jesus, man, this chart is, do I want to delete everything here? Let's actually just pull up a new one. Let's go to CB, the old Coinbase, right? Anyways, this one right here, playing off that same trend line. By hourly, what are we seeing? Same thing. What do we see on the hourly? I'm going to imagine the same thing as well. So we do see most lower term timeframes in concert with each other. The 4 hour soon, very likely to follow as well. I'd imagine any sort of a closure above 57,000 bucks, and you will see this naturally twist up, and we'd have all lower term timeframes on the same side. And in that case, I would be looking for an extension of this current bounce somewhere up another half. Well, I was going to say half $1,000 bucks, but that's not a terminology. Another 500 bucks or so to about 57,600 to 57,700ish region. You can see that we got some major moving averages coming in around this region as well. So I wouldn't really be looking at that as a major bias shift, because it doesn't destroy the trend for me. It doesn't really break the range except for on the extremely short-term time frame. So with all of that in mind, I would be looking for, again, a little bit of upside continuation here. And then if Bitcoin bears when it tests the downside once again, I'd be looking at some sort of very likely some sort of a high being put in somewhere in the mid 57 region. However, again, I need to be very clear with what I'm saying here, because I'm not bearish on the greater picture of Bitcoin. As long as Bitcoin is in an uptrend here on the daily, especially, I have very specific rules. I do not get fucking bearish looking for any sort of a reversal. And even on top of that, it's really the weekly that has been incredibly consistent with Bitcoin's history, calling all of the macro reversals throughout the history of this asset. But I wouldn't even be looking for any prolonged downside as long as Bitcoin is in an uptrend. And like we've been saying, it's pretty damn simple stuff here. I mean, as long as we're above this prior low at 51,500 on spot price action or 52,500 on CMEs, I look at that as still holding, and we do have a few good things going on across the board. Most importantly, I do first and foremost look at this as one massive consolidation. Obviously, why do I say that? Because the Bollinger Bands are squeezing on price action. That's a very clear giveaway. We also do see a clear and obvious nice tailing off of volume signature right here, which essentially does imply that we are looking at some sort of formation in action right now. You could even actually pull this further back throughout this last high in early January, in fact, and that would play into probably the more macro move of what this asset is doing, which is still kind of wedging itself into an apex, which is actually coming in around June, and that would even suggest that we might even be looking at a breakout probably not until the mid to later portion of this month. So if you think Bitcoin's boring right now, yeah, I think it's actually going to be a little bit boring for a little bit longer, to be honest with you. I know that people want to see the, crazy clickbait titles of like, this is the craziest chart pattern I've ever seen in my life. Oh my God. Oh, faith. Bullshit like that, right? Which is great to get clicks and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you cry wolf too many times, and well, what's realistically happening right here is Bitcoin's going more or less sideways. So I don't really look at any sort of major breakout or breakdown as long as Bitcoin is caught within the daily range, and the daily range is pretty much the same shit as we've been looking at for the past I guess like month and a half now. 59,500 to the upside versus our higher low at 51,500 to the downside. Sorry, did I say that properly? That seems like I repeated the same thing twice. What I meant to say was 59,500 to the upside versus 51,500 to the downside. As long as Bitcoin's also in between that range, I don't look at this as anything that is explosive, so to speak, and I still look at this with Bula-ish goggles long term. Again, I'm very happy to be bearish. I absolutely love being bearish, but at the end of the day, as long as Bitcoin's in a daily uptrend, I don't even consider that this is even remotely an issue. Of course, at some point in time, it very likely will do that. But, until that actually happens, well, you're more likely to continue on with the current trend. And I'm sure that someone out there is going to say, but does that mean that you're not going to sell the high? Well, of course not. I mean, look at this though. It does keep you in, this is why I have these sort of rules, because it keeps you in these sort of long-term, these long-term moves, really. I mean, you can see that going all the way back and over here. Daily's just been straight up the whole goddamn way through. And of course, the weekly is going to be following through on that as well. Anyways, going back, or do we want to go here for a second? I mean, we can also just kind of judge the range from a HVP perspective as well. You can see that on the lower term time frames is all incredibly low right now, around the single digits or in the single digits. Now starting to expand a little bit more on the extremely low term time frames, like the 3, 2, and hourly right here. Those actually are all expanding, but the 12-hour and daily, as you can see, are all trending down. So we're seeing low term time frames oscillations within a greater high term time frame contraction phase. Which, what does that suggest? Suggests that Bitcoin ranges on the high term time frames. Lower term time frames though are going to drive to and fro. But in its current state, coming back down to 54,000 bucks would be very much welcomed by myself, but doesn't mean that it has to happen. Anyways, more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but worth considering would also be this interplay between the green 55 exponential moving average right here and the bottom side Troll band, of which we did see the 55 cross the upside of the bottom side Troll band, which we have seen several times throughout the past 6 months of this very incredible biblical rally, if you want to call it that. I thought that was really, I thought that was very clever of Mr. Caretaker to basically call this rally in that sense. And he's exactly right. I mean, when you see a fucking 500% move over the course of 4 or 5 months, that is biblical, Anyways, looking at this right here, we have seen this interplay many times in the past. We saw it last back on over here in early March before this move from about 51 all the way to 62. We saw it over here in January from this move from about 30,000 all the way to, an ultimate high of about 58 before an actual reversal on that time frame, that being the daily. Time before that was way the fuck back on over here on this massive girthy green dildo party from about 20,000 bucks to, ultimately about 41,000 bucks right there. And then the time before that, way back on over here at about 10,000 bucks as well. So I do like that. And still within the general context of this formation, I mean, we still have an uptrend. We still have many long-term bullish things going on. So I don't really, I don't really subscribe to the craziness of this market, if you want to call it that. What is the buy daily looking like? Buy daily is actually bouncing off the 20 simple right there. Pretty damn classic stuff. 3-day is, again, didn't necessarily test a ton simple officially, but overall, if Bitcoin actually does put in a low here on the short-term timeframes, again, by coming back up, I think it was above 57.5 region, then I would start to look at it as such. This would be considered a test in that, in that metric, and I would essentially be looking at the higher-term timeframes right now to kind of judge when that continuation is still more likely. But again, looking at it, I do still think that Bitcoin is, technically speaking, I should be looking for Bitcoin to come back down somewhere around about 54 to 54,500. The reason why I do say that is because, CME's got the good old gap for the gap boys over here. Could you argue that that's already been met? Pretty fucking close, but technically no. You at least want to see a wick to wick on the daily. I know some people go down to a 5-minute, but I don't think that works in cryptocurrency. In traditional markets, yes, that does work. Anyways, as far as this goes right here, you do see, or you probably do see, that this rising trend line getting our last few lows would be also confluent with the 2-spot 272, which is also confluent with that gap on CME. So I do like that, especially on this extension, which has been working so damn well. You can see that the 1414 got this base right here, the 2-spot gets this base right here. here. The 2.618 has been essentially getting our highs, and I'd still be using this, as a general guide for upside targets if and when Bitcoin does get going here. But we, technically speaking, do have a bit of a swing failure pattern going on right here, as you can see with Bitcoin breaking back down below what would have been the breakout trend line at 58,800-ish region on CME. So with that in mind, I'm usually going to be looking for a downside test of whatever the bottom side support is on that time frame, and actually would still be looking at this region right here. So I do think that it's very possible that Bitcoin could do that. And with that in mind, I should now overlay conditions for looking for a short-term reversal, as we might have even just seen the high of this rally thus far. But my conditions for a short-term reversal here, which would essentially make me bullish on all time frames, would be this. I need to see Bitcoin essentially get back above about 58.5, not 57.5, although 57.5 would be, 57.5 would be decent. But of course, 58.5 is going to actually be a once again continuation of structure, and we have an uptrend on the shorter term timeframes once again. So with all of that said, until that happens, I don't really think that it's appropriate to be looking for any sort of a breakout to the upside nor a breakout to the downside, as long as we're trading above our last higher low. And what's most likely to happen here, Bitcoin goes sideways within a range for like the next week or two, anywhere between about 61,000 to the upside and 53 to 54,000 bucks to the downside. And until we actually break one of those sides, I don't really have any major calls to be made. And this market's probably gonna be boring as fuck, because that's what markets typically do after getting extremely hot, as you have seen in the past few months here. We've all been pretty much spoiled with these mega moves, which I actually don't think is necessarily done just yet. But especially for the newer people within a market like this, or newer people to trading or investing, if you will, this is going to be very difficult to deal with, I imagine. So with that said, again, I do kind of favor the short-term downside here. If I had to pick a side, we do see daily TSI is still twisting down. Now, of course, this is within the bullish buy zone, so don't look at this as like, a death sentence, obviously, but it would essentially play within the guise of a bit of a short-term pullback here, or at least continuation on the short-term timeframes. 12-hour, same thing, essentially. Now, if we do start to cross back down below the bullish buy zone, that would be a bit concerning, but we don't have that just yet. And if we go over here to the 3-day, still fine. What if we go to the 2-day? Yeah, 2-day and 3-day actually are printing potential bearish divergence there, which would not be the best thing of all time. However, where is going to be my natural target on a bearish divergence call on these time frames? It's going to be the 21, and guess where the 21 is? Right around 53 to 54,000 bucks. Very interesting how that works out. In fact, the buy daily is right actually at 54,700-ish region. So again, I do think it's possible Bitcoin's maybe put in a short-term low here, but the conditions for myself looking for a reversal are very, 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 very clear. A short-term, move to the upside is really not out of the question, but until Bitcoin actually really starts to break back above about 58.4 to 58.500-ish region, I still think that it's more or less a range here with short-term upside likely implied, and then medium-term downside perhaps if Bitcoin puts in another lower high anywhere below 58.5. So if you do see any sort of a high structure being confirmed right there, around there, that's when I would start to switch around to looking for another leg to the downside, probably 54,000 bucks, give or take a few hundred. But for right now, it does look like Bitcoin wants to play out a little bit of a bounce. Anyways, my voice is starting to fail me again, so I do apologize as this is going to turn into raspy lesbian time. I want to quickly look at traditional markets and see what we got going on over there. Did we hit our upside targets on NASDAQ futures? We did. We hit both our upside and downside targets there, which is actually really, really good. This one continuing onwards and upwards. I mean, this actually might switch me around to being a little bit more short-term bullish on Bitcoin here. Although, well, short-term, yes, is bullish, but I would still, within the context of this current formation, look for a little bit of medium-term pushback. Of course, NASDAQ, however, we do have a 13,800 target, which is pretty fucking close to being met right there. Already trading 13.7, pretty damn good. So we do see continuation off of the confirmed higher low on the weekly, also playing at that hidden bullish divergence. Again, these markets being incredibly correlated does bode well for Bitcoin, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing make new all-time highs. Maybe even this month. On top of that, we do see SPY futures continuation as well. I'm still sticking with my 4150 target. I believe it is. No, sorry, 4100 is the next short-term target. But that's only relevant for the short term. 4150 is still on the menu as well. And weekly RSI is really going to be the tell here, as you see this nice and obvious consolidation right at the edge of the bullish control zone. I would very, very likely look for this one to make a long trudge towards the back end of the bullish control zone. I actually really like the way that that's operating right now, especially with weekly TSI also just having a fresh bullish cross in the critical zone. I mean, that's usually going to lead on into another continuation drive. And in this case, I mean, this is blue sky breakout. This is price discovery. This is straight up just fucking green dildo parties right now. So with that in mind, again, all major indices thus far bullish. What do we see on Dow Jones? We see pretty much the same thing, although not as obvious here. This one playing out a bit of a short-term pullback. Do we hit our pullback target? I did say somewhere around about 33.2. Didn't quite get there. We got 33.233. Close enough in this case. More importantly, though, this looks like a classic retest of the prior breakout at 33.150, 33.2 region, and continuation drive after that. Is there anything on the short-term timeframes I should be aware of here? Yep, looks like another higher low to me. Do we have hidden bullish evidence that would further confirm that? No, actually we do not. So fair enough. Dow Jones would be the most suspect one, but I do think that SPY is leading right now. NASDAQ is following, and then Dow Jones is following all of them. So we've seen a bit of a rotation as opposed to last month where Dow Jones was leading, SPY was following, and then NASDAQ was following all of those. And for like the, I don't know, year prior, NASDAQ was leading the whole fucking way through. So with that in mind, I think that we're going to see another leg of that rotational market, and that's going to, bode well more or less for the long term here, and of course for Bitcoin as well. We could do a quick look at Ethereum as well, and then call it a day, and maybe have a stream later. But I'm not so sure right now. I'm like actually starting to feel it in my throat. Oh, that's going to be cut up in terrible ways. But looking at the daily right here. Bouncing off the 21, classic shit. Where did we close yesterday? Closed 1965. So I wowould be looking for a bounce off here nonetheless. This one looking a little bit better than Bitcoin, actually. We do have, if I go to a 12er, it's probably going to be somewhere around here. Yeah, we do have hidden bullish evidence in the making. Any sort of a closure above the last 12-hour high, and I would look at that as confirmed, and I'd be looking for a short-term move back onto the upside, probably around 2,100 bucks, probably even more, probably even another continuation drive if that does indeed happen. Again, I'm in no way, shape, or form bearish on the weekly right here. This is continuation to me over the next couple weeks. Very likely to new all-time highs. Still sticking with my targets of 21, or sorry, not 21, although 21 is along the way, 2,500 and then 2,800 respectively, with a bigger of interest on 2,800-ish region. We also do have, or do we have, hidden bullish evidence on the weekly? Nope. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Else is playing the old spoon, the spoon-a-roni again. Anyways, is there anything else that I want to be looking at right here? 2 days, just bounce off the 10 simple. Of all major moving averages, 3 days, even more impressive than that. Hidden bullish evidence on the other side. Yep, I'm not going to hate that. So you know what? I think Ethereum's actually a little bit more obvious right here. And when looking across all of the different major indices, I am starting to think that maybe Bitcoin actually has put in a bit of a well, obviously it's a short-term low, but is it actually going to flow into all of the major timeframes and where we get like the stars aligning where all timeframes are bullish? Well, I'm still a little bit hazy on that, but more importantly, with traditional markets and with Ethereum, I do think that that's actually becoming more and more likely here. So Ethereum, as you can see, this one's going to obviously put in a bit of a higher low, or sorry, not a higher low, but this one's going to put in a bit of a reversal with any sort of a closure back above 2075 region. And in the short-term timeframes, I imagine we do have, or do we have? Let's go over here. Let's see how momentum's looking looking right now. We do see 4-hour stops coming all the way down, actually very similar to Bitcoin. I do see a nice trend line coming in from here, which we'll actually be testing. You might even argue on this current tick, so you would expect a bit of a reaction. 3 hours already turning around off the same region, and bi-hourly is certainly already there too, even the same sort of trend line going back to 21st of March, and hourly is already up, so that actually bring all momentum onto the same side for the short-term timeframes, and that would make me be looking for, an extension back up towards probably even 2100-ish region. So when looking across the board, it does seem a little bit more likely that Bitcoin perhaps could even have seen the low right there. What I'd be judging this off of, just because it's a little more obvious, is Mr. Buterol. 1955, the magical number on this one. Any sort of a 4-hour or even 2-hour dildo closure below there, and I'd be looking for a big leg down. And when I say a big leg down, I mean like another $100, maybe even $200 down to 1750-ish region. Retest this long-term trend line, which would be governing your higher lows thus far. Also kind of synonymous or around the 55 right there. So anywhere between about basically anywhere around like 1750-ish region. Also the 618. right here as well, though that technically is the 382 because this is backwards as I'm looking for extensions, but that's neither here nor there. My point is that based off of world indices, or mostly US indices, I would still kind of err on the side of the upside. I mean, that is certainly on the side of the trend, and it also is worth repeating that Bitcoin, of course, on the monthly is still looking damn girthy right here. I have no problems with this chart in any way, shape, or form. We have the exact same interplay that we had available last month and all 6 months prior to that, where anytime the Bitcoin is closed above the topside Toronto band, we've tested the topside Toronto band, but it has been a continuation to new all-time highs after that. And in this case, that topside Toronto band is currently coming in around about $52,000 or so, or actually 51,500-ish region, and it's reactive to current price action. So if Bitcoin does rally up, let's say $69,000, which is kind of my target, if Bitcoin does break to the upside here, then I'd imagine that this gets pulled up somewhere around, well, maybe even somewhere around our current low, because our current low is 55,400-ish region now. So with that said, it could very likely solidify that condition, especially if Bitcoin rallies, $10,000 from the from its current area. On top of that, we do see, of course, accumulation distribution indicator giving the bias for this month of bullishness as well, with that positive slope still being maintained, which has again called all macro reversals pretty much since the dawn of time for Bitcoin as well. So I do quite like that. That keeps me it keeps me more or less on the macro bullish side. MACD histogram increasing into this new month, and we do see MACD, or sorry, not MACD, but DMI plus dominant while the ADX strengthens as well. So with all of that said, I do still more or less look at the upside. Again, I do like to look at these charts with fresh eyes here. So with all of that in mind, if I am looking at Bitcoin over here, kind of wrapping it up, 55.5 to the downside would be the short-term time frame range. If that does break, I would look for a move somewhere probably around 54. So it's not a huge move right there, but it is like a $1,500 move to be fair. By the same token, until that happens, I'd be looking for a bit of a short-term move to the upside. In fact, probably back up somewhere around like 57.5 to 57.8 region. And then if we do see continuation above basically the last lower high on our short-term timeframes, which is right around 58.350, we'll call it, or 58.4. I've been saying 58.5, but it's all basically the same thing to me. Then I'd be looking at this as, well, likely to pop back up at the very least to $6,000. And at that point, you got to be thinking, well, it has potential to break out once again, I suppose. With all that said, I do want to wish you the best. I cannot promise that I'll be on live stream later today because my voice is like absolutely fucking wrecked right now. So maybe it comes back to life soon enough, hopefully. But if not, if we don't see each other, I want to wish you a happy and healthy rest of your day. Take care and see you soon.